Evening all. Okay, good evening. I thought it would be nice this week to have a look at some games of Paul Morphy. My interest in Paul Morphy has been reignited because I came across some interesting footage on YouTube of Bobby Fischer going over one of Paul Morphy's games. Really amazing and interesting footage I've never seen before, actually. If you search on YouTube for Paul Morphy, you should be able to see it. Fischer goes over a Paul Morphy game. And I thought, actually, there's a lot of games I found which I've not seen before of Paul Morphy, which are really quite instructive. And, you know, I've covered quite a few on my YouTube channel, but here are some games which I don't believe we've covered before. So let's have a look. This game in Paris, 1863. Playing white was Jules, Arnous de Riviere. We'll flip the board. So Paul Morphy playing black. Let's have a look. E4, E5. So we see after knight F3, knight C6, not Roy Lopez, but an invitation for your Go piano. If bishop C5 is played, we'd have Go piano. But actually black plays knight F6, inviting the dreaded fried liver attack. So we see knight G5. So we're in fried liver attack territory. Black plays D5, this gambit. But remember, this is 1863. The gambit idea isn't so evolved just back then. After E takes D, we see knight A5. And white actually didn't play bishop B5 check, which I think is the most popular move here. White instead played D3. So it's interesting, how does Paul Morphy exploit this D3 move? He plays H6, so immediately there's a problem, actually, potentially. If knight E4, perhaps black can consider just taking, because this bishop will be loose. So knight E4, we can just take here, and if check, we can play C6, and otherwise, so there's a problem there. Okay, so the knight actually goes to F3. I'll high plan the game. So this is Jules Arnous de Riviere playing white against Paul Morphy in Paris 1863. So knight F3. So again, this bishop's slightly, you know, a tactical vulnerability. E4 trying to undermine the support of the C4 bishop. Queen E2. And actually now we see something which is very interesting in some respects. We see knight takes C4, and after D takes C4, what has Paul Morphy achieved here? You know, he's still a pawn down, but actually in a lot of Paul Morphy games you'll see that one ingredient is strong dark square control. Like often he's controlling the D4 square as black, which is quite an achievement to have pressure on D4. And you'll see this here, he wants to try and get pressure on the dark squares as well. This diagonal's good, D4's good to try and get. And this next move strikes across the dark squares. But this is quite a recurring pattern in Paul Morphy games. Very aggressive bishops, especially white's going to castle on the king side, F2, this diagonal in general. But we'll see now, after H3, black castles, knight H2. And this now shows Paul's is able to kind of use pawns as a battering ram potentially. He plays knight H7, so it's not a piece solution, it's a pawn solution to try and create a battering ram here against white's king. So I thought this is a very, very interesting game. The queen obviously can't take because, you know, the king's still in the center. So we see knight D2 F5, so far so good. Knight B3. Bishop drops back to D6 here. If it's further harassed, well, there's always bishop E5 now. White castles. And now this is quite an incredible conception here, based on a number of forcing move ideas. Black, well, he's prohibited from f4. Obviously, he doesn't want to lose e4. But he actually finds a kind of forcing move solution, which is actually quite incredible. He plays bishop takes h2 check, king takes h2. And now, guess what? What does Paul Morphy play here? Can anyone guess? Well, I'll show you actually. Okay, so he plays f4. I'll get to the more dramatic part anyway. Queen takes e4. There's an obvious forcing move, knight g5 here to attack the queen. Queen d4. Now here I was stunned when looking at this game myself at this next move, which is really, really brutal. It's like Paul Morphy was, as strong as any modern, tactically really, really, really strong. I would say, modern IM or GM, in terms of being able to see forcing sequences. And here, this is a really good tactic. So what do you think Black plays in this position? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. It's not knight takes. It's not bishop takes h3. Now bishop takes h3. Actually, it's interesting. That's a suggestion. I mean, bishop takes h3 is good in principle. If white takes, then we've got knight f3 check. But I guess that after bishop takes h3, I guess that bishop takes f4 might be good to bypass that. But there's something which I found really quite brutal which was played, and it was actually knight f3 check. So white is absolutely compelled to take this knight because of this fork. Absolutely compelled. And now we see queen h4, and look, the defense, it's gone. There's no defense. It's pretty bad. Rook h1, bishop takes h3. White tries bishop d2, but now the king's had it. Rook f6. The white king is getting mated, check, and then actually more precisely, the white's getting mated not with bishop f1, maybe bishop f5, king g1, rook g6, that sort of thing. So that's it. A really quite a crushing game. But how many of us would see this forcing move continuation, I wonder, which was in this position? If we just rewind back here, this is quite an interesting thing that happened. This idea of playing for f4 anyway, dropping e4, but this whole knight h7 to g5 business, attacking h3, brilliant coordination of like knight and bishop, queen, everything's joining the attacking party here. And the pawn formation is aggressive, but maybe a lesser player wouldn't be thinking of bishop takes h2 check here. Fantastic forcing move solution, I thought. So f4 is also shielding against the bishop g5, so knight g5 with tempo. I thought that was quite elegant. I don't know what you guys think of that, but I thought that was quite an elegant game to look at. And there are quite a number of Paul Morphy games which are outside of the very, the greatest, most famous ones, which are really elegant like this. So I thought we'd kick off with this one. Let's have a look at another. So we're going outside of the standard Paul Morphy games here, but still some very, very cute ones. So here against Adolf Anderssen in 1858, 22nd of December. So e4, and there's some notes by Lowenthal. So we'll flip the board. e5, knight f3, knight c6, and we see Roy Lopez, Russian system, knight f6, and now d4, actually opening up the game with d4, knight takes, e takes, e5, and this next move might not be the best according to sorry, not Lowenthal. c6. He says a weak move and cause of all subsequent embarrassment here to play c6. So why is this? Well, Morphy just castled, allowing his bishop to be snapped off, but now much stronger than e takes f. That wouldn't give black any problems. E takes f. Paul Morphy plays bishop g5. Okay, so he's got options to take on f6 now and stuff. So black plays bishop e7. E takes f6, bishop takes f6. Check, king f8. Bishop takes f6, queen takes f6. So the king safety has been not very good. The rooks are not coordinated. White plays c3, still trying to open up the game, accelerate development. Kind of Smith-Morrow gambit to get this knight developed in an accelerated fashion. But that doesn't want to take any more material. He tries d5. He wants to open up his bishop. C takes d4. Okay, what's the material situation now? It's a miserable pawn up for black. Okay, so bishop e6, knight c3, hitting b5. That's protected. Now rook e5. And for a moment it looks as though has black survived things. Well, queen b3 keeps the pressure up on d5. Queen e7 is played. Okay, rook a e1. And this next move looks crazy, actually. Black plays g5. Okay, I mean, he really wants to tempt white, I guess, to play knight takes d5, but Paul Morphy is not having any of that. He just puts his queen back on d1 here. Okay, and actually there might be a threat now of knight takes d5 without any nasty thing on the queen. So this queen gets out of the way of that with queen f6. Now rook 1 e3, and black is faced with a severe threat here which he misses. Black blundered badly with rook g8, and okay, a neat forcing move here. Can you guess? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. What finishes the game here? Okay, there's been a suggestion. Shall I mention it, or shall I wait for any other suggestions? Okay. White has the, if you look at forcing moves in this position, you'll see that there's one which exposes a tactical vulnerability of this queen and being on the same file. Okay, rook takes e6. Because if f takes, we've got now rook f3. If you look at forcing moves, it's very, very useful exercise in your own games. It often wins a lot of games just looking for forcing moves. So rook takes e6, yeah. I don't think this was as elegant as the first game I showed you, but it's a classic. They did play some classic games, Paul Morphy and Adolf Anderssen. Let's go on to another game now. Paul Morphy against Schrufer. Against Schrufer. Let's just reload that PGN. In Paris, 1859. So against Schrufer, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and Paul Morphy plays bishop c4. After knight f6, not a fried liver move, knight g5, but instead an alternative, plenty of alternatives, d4. Okay, so it's Scotch gambit territory, giving up 2 pawns, and this is still being played to this day, this kind of thing. Rook e1, d5, bishop takes, queen takes, all theory, knight c3, queen h5, knight takes e4, bishop e6. Now white plays the logical move here, knight eg5, so okay, e6 was vulnerable. This next move may be a bit dubious. Bishop b4. It allows Paul Morphy to strand the king in the centre. He plays rook takes e6. So after f takes, black is not going to castle now. And also white's threatening knight takes g7, forking queen and king. So that has to be defended. Queen f7. And now both knights support each other with tempo with knight fg5. Attacking the queen again, queen e7. And now queen e2 threatens knight takes c7 or knight takes g7. We see black playing bishop d6. Okay, protecting c7. But then there's still g7 to take, and that's taken. Knight takes g7. King d7. Check. King d8. And this is, I don't know, this is quite neat here. I feel. This next move, is it so immediately clear it should work? So white to play in this position. Guess what white plays if I give you 20 seconds here. White to play. So what would you play here as white? Okay, now there has been a suggestion of knight 5 to e6, and I'm not entirely sure that that's brilliant, because, you know, maybe king c8, possibly king c8, and the king might be escaping. So actually black has got his own threat here as well to bear in mind. Queen e1 is mating. So actually Paul Morphy plays knight f7 check, which I thought, you know, when flicking through the game quite quickly, I thought this is intriguing, this knight f7, but clearly it gets the queen off to avoid, you know, being mated. And there's only one move here because this knight's stopping e8. The queen's coming across there, so the queen has to take. And now we see another powerful forcing move, bishop g5 check. And you might ask, well, why on earth is this so different from before? What is happening here? Okay, bishop e7 is played, and now we see knight e6 check. And it is different because, well, I think there's nothing protecting d7 here. The connection to d7 has been damaged, and white now can play after king c8. Well, let's see. He played knight c5 check, which is winning, because if king d8, then we have queen d7 mate, and in the game king b8, and we get the classic smothered mate continuation, knight d7 check, knight b6 double check, king b8, and of course I hope you all guys can see the finish here. without looking at the score sheet on Play Chess. If you're on the notation tab, please switch away for these tests, these little tests. So white plays in this position. What does white play? Okay. Come on guys, forcing moves, forcing moves. You must see the smothered mate pattern in your own games. An essential mating pattern. Yeah? The essential mating pattern here. What wins for whites? Come on. Queen c8 check. You're removing, the knight's protecting the queen so the king can't take. After rook takes. Now the final checkmate. But question. Was this really forced? Let's just rewind. So the check here, what about king e8? Was that really destructive? King e8. How would white have won in this position? Does anyone know? I'm trying to work it out myself. I'm trying to work it out. I hope you guys are trying to work it out. Bishop h6 is a suggestion. Knight c7. Is it so clear? Possibly the idea is just to win a rook or something. Knight takes c7. Right, now here clearly though king f8 is ruled out because of bishop h6 check. That's for sure. That's unpalatable. So the king goes back here, and then what? I guess, you know, maybe knight takes a8 is enough. Knight, bishop, queen. We've got more pawns, haven't we? We've got 2 extra pawns here. That might be good enough. If anyone can spot anything stronger. So this was the situation. King e8. King e8 instead of there. Well, it looks, unless rook e1 looks pretty good as well, maybe. Just keeping the pressure. Okay. Yeah. If anyone has got any better ideas, speak up as we're going to a new game. Or leave it in the comments of the video if I upload to YouTube later. 18 knight e7. Hang on. Bishop g5 check knight e7. There's also something to consider. Yes. And what does white play in this position? I wish I didn't choose this game now. What is going on here? Oh man. What is going on in this game? I don't know if this was a 5-minute game between them or something. Played in 1859. Queen takes d4. Thank you. Queen takes d4. I don't know. What does it do? Yeah, there is a difference. I don't know. It doesn't seem as though white's winning anymore. Odd game. Okay. Yes, let's swiftly move on. Okay, let's swiftly move on to another game. Yeah. Okay. Morphy against Bottin. Now this, I've definitely done a bit of pre-analysis on this next game. And I can tell you there's something wrong with this game for sure. There is definitely something wrong with this game for sure. Paris 1858. So again, so e4, e5. Paul Morphy playing white. He plays c3. I don't know, was it Saragotova opening? So it goes. What is this called again? Anyway, knight f6, d4. Black took on e4. D takes e5. Bishop c5. And now Paul Morphy. I'm definitely calling this optimistic. Some of you know there's this video on YouTube about the Disputed Immortal, but this is definitely an optimistic move here, played by white. Queen g4. Okay, yeah, Ponziani opening. But Queen g4, I think, is very optimistic for knight takes f2. And as it happens, I was preparing a different video earlier today in the Traxler counter gambit, where there's an immortal game of Traxler, and most of the fun in the Traxler counter gambit is for the same reason why white gets fun here. I think that black's best move here is taking with the bishop, and in the Traxler, you know, taking with the bishop instead of taking with the knight is also a good move for those that know the Traxler counter gambit. But here, I think taking with the bishop, you know, leaves black with a promising situation. The king is forced to move. You can protect the knight, and you know it shouldn't be too bad. For example, queen takes g7. You can try and win the rook. Black has bishop c5 to defend here, and black should be fine. But maybe we can let Paul off because opening theory wasn't so evolved. So you know, if everyone's improvising early, you know, that's you expect openings not to be that hot back in 1858. But black took with the knight, and here is where there's a lot of fun, because now queen takes g7 is very dangerous. It's actually damaged black's control of the f6 square, and this queen hasn't got too many squares after rook f8, bishop g5. The problem here is quite simple, that the king is carnivorous here. If bishop e7, white can just take and then take on at f2. Okay, and someone said I wanted to play the Traxler, but I don't like playing. Feel like playing this Roy Lopez so often. Okay, so here this is fine for white. So that's why this is big trouble now for black. He plays the desperate looking f6, and now white plays e takes f6, and there's a huge problem for black here, which is not shown by the game. In the game we see rook takes f6, which obviously is losing the rook, and in the game, you know, bishop takes bishop e7, queen g8, black resigned, curtains. You know, bishop f8, we're going to win the queen. Okay, but the interesting point about this game is here, after knight takes h1, can you see what white could play here, which is really crushing? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. White to play. What is the most crushing move available? Okay. Well done to I could create a game between you guys. Play chess wins this, because Arnous has suggested bishop e2. This is the most crushing move. You on Twitch, I don't know, you've lost this battle, because this is the most crushing move. Bishop h5, is absolutely crushing threat. F7, I mean, there's no defense here. There's absolutely no defense, which is any good. If F7, you know, this isn't so hot. Rook takes. We're attacking the queen here, and you know, black could end up being better here. Okay, black, you know, could end up being better. He has munched the rook here. Okay, so after E takes F6, black played, you know, rook takes F6, and you know that was it. That was it. So okay, so that was against Botin. Let's go on to another site. Mobile. Meek against Morphy. Okay, Meek against Morphy. For some reason I've got the event site as mobile. I think that must be wrong. I don't know. A place called Mobile? A tournament called Mobile? Anyway, this apparently was played in 1855. So E4, and Morphy was black. E5. Knight F3, Knight C6. We see D4. Morphy takes this. Bishop C4. Bishop C5. Knight G5. And it looks as though Knight H6 defends comfortably F7. But Paul Morphy it seems to be a victim of a little combination in the opening. He does have a loose bishop, and loose bishops are prone to double attacks. And we see a double attack idea being created with Knight takes F7. Because after Knight takes, Bishop takes, King takes, check. Pretty nasty. Ouch. Is Paul Morphy going to lose this game? This can't be a good opening, surely. Well, after G6, Queen takes C5. Black's position isn't all that bad, really. You know, what is actually lost? He's up in development, actually, a little bit. He's attacking the Queen now. We see Queen B5, which looks like an artificial move anyway. Black looks to have nice central control. The rook's already in the centre. It seems it's Meek that has really played this opening maybe worse than Morphy. And again, moving the Queen B3 check doesn't help development. D5, F3. And the Queen is subject to harassment now with Knight A5. Queen D3. And the King's had it now. It's like, what's happened with White's development? D takes E4, F takes E4, check. Double attacking. It's Black's turn to double attack now. G3. He takes with check. King F2. The Queen goes back, protecting the rook. Knight D2. We see now Rook E3, which is trying to get the Queen away from this E2 square. The Queen wants to hang around the E2 square, so she moves to B5. Okay. Mobile Alabama, thanks. I don't know. Is that Mobile Alabama, the location of this game? Okay, now we see move C6. The Queen wants to protect E2 still, getting a bit desperate. And now a full decoy to get the Queen away from E2 with Bishop H3 to try and get this Rook E2 check in. Is that really, really crushing? In fact. Or maybe it's not even about Rook E2. It looks like Queen F6 is absolutely crushing. Let's just check this out now. In the game we see Queen D1. But if Queen takes H3, so let's see, who would vote for Queen F6 or who would vote for Rook E2? I'll give you 20 seconds starting from now. Which is more effective? Or is there another move? Come on, check your forcing moves here. Queen f6 check or rook e2 check? Actually, I'm not so convinced about Queen f6. I thought that might have been actually quite good. But I think it runs out of steam. I think Queen f6 check might run out of steam here. Because King g1, what do we play here? This knight's got knight f1 here as a defense. Check, we got knight f1. And that comes to an end. Now let's look at the rook e2 check. So I think rook e2 check. Now if King g1, that's end of game off the check here. And if King f1, we can play check here. And that's pretty end of game as well. So it looks as though the idea is still, this rook e2. So we see Queen d1 in the game. And now rook f8. So the other rook's joining in. What's happened to White's rooks in this game? How did Morphy demonstrate such huge development advantage of all his pieces? So after knight f3, he just moves his king now to e8, and this is crushing pressure on f3. White has to resign here. For example, takes the queen joins in. Well, it's mate actually. So what on earth happened in that? Can we pick up any tips from that opening? Why was White's opening such a disaster? He had played a gambit, and you would think, well, with a gambit he should be ahead in development. We see knight g5, and Morphy had played a seemingly provocative move, knight h6, with a loose bishop on c5. Do you find it strange that Black ended up with a massive development advantage with this knight h6 move? I guess if we count the number of movements, 1, 2, 3, then we've got 1, 2. Okay. Black's already got the knight developed. So we saw knight takes, okay, winning a pawn. But after d6, more moves with the queen. And we've already got this rook in play on e8. So how on earth did this happen? Why is this rook already in place on e8? What a mystery. It's like White's gambit didn't do anything. That's what I'm thinking. Why didn't White's gambit actually gain any development initiative? It seems that White's queen wasted even more time. White should have just castled here and maybe given up that pawn. But it's not so hot, this position. I mean, we can even throw in rook e5 maybe. So White made things worse than they needed to be by moving the queen again, and really gave Black loads of development and everything coordinating. Okay, so that was quite brutal really in the end. Okay, let's have a look at another game. Now this was in a blindfold simultaneous in Paris, believe it or not. Blindfold simul against Henry Borcher, and there's an annotation. Someone's annotated it as well. Okay. Okay, Henry Borcher, blindfold simul. Just try and reload that. Okay. So e4 from Paul, and he's playing this blindfold simul. Notes by Lowenthal: e5, knight f3, the Philidor d6. We see d4, ed, queen takes, knight c6. Morphy pins that knight, bishop d7, He gives up the light square bishop. Bishop takes c6. Bishop g5. Black plays f6 now, which potentially weakens that e6 square. Bishop h4. Knight h6. Okay. Knight c3. Bishop e7. Both sides castle kingside. Check. Which is a really good move now, because after king h8, knight d4, the knight's coming into e6. Maybe black should have considered bishop d7, but instead he plays queen d7, inviting the knight in for, to e6, but it doesn't go there straight away. Rook ad1, rook f7. And now he gives the knight great support actually with f4. So this f5 can be used to support that knight on e6. a5. And he doesn't mind playing f5 here. So you might think, well, isn't this a backward pawn technically? Well, black's in no position at all to exploit this backward pawn. And there's a classic game, Lascar against Capablanca, in Nottingham 1936, I think. No, not might be, where the backward pawn is more irrelevant than the e6 marking of e6. So here e6 is more important. So rook f8, knight e6. White is a fine game now. Rook g8. Lowenthal wrote a4, fixing black's pawn, stopping a bit of counterplay there. Knight g4. Queen e2. And the knight goes to e5. It's black's best piece, this knight on e5. And we see this next move designed to eliminate it straight off the bat. Let's take this knight off. Maybe queen c8. It's taken. D takes. And now going for the king with rook f3, this rook lift. So going for the execution on h7. Looks good. Bishop d7. Rook h3. And white is immediately threatening rook takes h7. So if bishop takes, I think we can just play it here, because this is mating. So black played h6. Hang on a sec. Hang on, Lowenthal, is he supposed to be a good player? He wrote some notes here. Apparently these were his notes to the game. Oh no, rook e8, sorry. Oh, yeah, that if rook e8, that vacates. There's no rook h7 here, of course. But his notes to the game: queen h5, h6, knight takes g7 would be crashing through, basically. So that's no good. So black played h6 here. Queen d2, threatening again. Rook takes h6 now. King h7. Yes, he's just dropped a piece though, because it was a double attack. It was actually a double attack on d7 and h6. So he's just won a piece. Okay. But here is quite a neat thing that happened after bishop d6. Morphy didn't just swap queens off and play like that. Can you guess what he played in this position? This is really quite interesting. So white to play here, blindfold Simmel. What does Morphy play in this position? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. Anyone? Okay, yeah, he doesn't exchange off queens. He actually plays rook takes h6. This is quite spectacular, I thought. King takes h6. And the idea here is, can you guess? The idea is not queen f7. I think queen e8 might be good here to try and defend g6. But in fact, the idea is leaving the queen hanging with rook d3. Leaves the queen hanging. Oh dear. Oh. You know, if queen takes, then rook h3. So black tries king h5, but now check, and mate. So I think these Morphy games are actually quite cute and probably quite instructive, especially in terms of forcing moves, and he's picking up all the right ingredients for the attack. You know, leads and development, central control, you know, a lot of ingredients just needed for great attacks. And unfortunately I've run out of games. I thought I'd have enough games to last about an hour, but my PGN has gone. My PGNs have been exhausted. But if you liked this week, we could carry on next week with some more Morphy games, because I think they're quite interesting and instructive. So what do you think? Did you enjoy this week? Okay. I hope you did. I'll upload this to YouTube. So thanks for watching, and see you next week. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.